As training camp approaches, one of the names generating the most discussion is Dalton Knecht. His situation is complicated because his first real stretch of NBA action hasn't exactly gone smoothly. The Summer League was particularly rough for him, and to make matters even more complicated, the Lakers already dealt him once in a trade. After that move and eventual return, his role never seemed to settle. He drifted out of the rotation, and in the rare opportunities he did get, he often looked lost or hesitant, as though he was second-guessing himself on every possession. That's not unusual for a rookie, but in his case, the circumstances made it even tougher. Being traded so early in a career can be a real mental hurdle. It sends a message, fair or not, that you're not considered a foundational piece of the franchise, and it's difficult to immediately lock back into attack mode for a team that already showed willingness to move you. Veterans who've been in the league for years usually take this in stride, but for someone just getting started, it can be deflating. Early in the season, Knecht flashed energy and explosiveness, showing the kind of promise that made him a first-round pick. But when he hit the inevitable rookie slump, his confidence seemed to waver. To then find himself on the trading block during that same slump made the situation even harder to bounce back from. Projecting what year 2 will look like for Knecht is tricky. If he repeats what we saw in Summer League, there's a real possibility he'll either be used strictly as trade bait or end up stuck at the end of the bench. The Lakers may give him a few minutes here and there, but likely only to showcase him for a potential deal. For him to carve out a role, he has to shake off the mental weight of that first season, focus on his strengths, and play with freedom. Ideally, a veteran like LeBron James could take him aside, remind him that the best way to silence critics is to simply perform, and encourage him to get back to playing his own game. If Knecht can block out the noise and just hoop, his talent could still be a valuable asset. The main issue, however, is how he fits into this particular Lakers roster. His game is more versatile than just being a spot-up shooter, but on this team, that may be the only role realistically available to him. That's why many believe his best chance to truly develop might come with another organization. Even in an optimistic scenario, his ceiling with the Lakers may only be as a 4th or 5th scoring option. And unless his defense takes a serious leap forward, there's no clear path for him to consistently crack the starting lineup. Still, his offensive potential is real. Knecht is the kind of player who can explode at any moment, drop 30 points out of nowhere, hit a string of threes, and suddenly swing the outcome of a game. He's done that at every level: college, preseason, and in flashes in the NBA. He can go cold for a stretch and then suddenly catch fire, burying 6 shots in a row from beyond the arc. That streaky explosiveness is the kind of wild card every contender wants to have on the roster. The question is simply where he fits in the rotation, especially with new additions and returning pieces. Players like Jake LaRavia and a healthy Jared Vanderbilt bring shooting and defense. Marcus Smart provides playmaking and toughness. Rui Hachimura is locked in as a starter, while role players like Gabe Vincent are still in the mix. Even prospects like Bronny James and Adthero bring attributes, defense, energy, versatility, that coaches might prefer over Knecht's offense, especially since the team already has scoring depth. That logjam makes it difficult to see where Knecht's minutes would consistently come from. Dalton Knecht's place on this Lakers roster is one of the most fascinating storylines because it highlights the difference between raw scoring ability and the all-around skill set that championship teams truly need. In today's NBA, you can't just be a scorer. You have to defend, hustle, dive for loose balls, and do the dirty work that doesn't show up in the box score. That's why guys like Bronny James have already said publicly that the only way they'll see the floor is by doing all those little things. It's also the reason Knecht slid down in the rotation. By nearly every metric, he was the weakest defensive player on the team. And while he's a natural scorer, he simply didn't bring the intangibles the Lakers needed on a nightly basis. That doesn't mean he has no value. Knecht is a bucket getter, plain and simple, and there's always going to be space in the league for a guy who can light it up offensively. The problem is that the Lakers don't really need him to fill that role right now. Unless he's pouring in 25-30 points on a given night, he often gives back just as much, if not more, on the defensive end. Scoring 12 but allowing 20 doesn't keep you on the court long, especially when the roster already has players who can both score and defend. So the question becomes, where does Knecht realistically fit in? The truth is, Dalton Knecht absolutely has the physical tool, the size, and the athleticism to at least become a serviceable defender at the NBA level. No one is asking him to transform overnight into a defensive stopper or suddenly become prime Klay Thompson, locking down the best scorers on the perimeter. That's unrealistic. What the Lakers need from him is far more attainable. Reach an average, respectable level on that end of the floor. If he can simply hold his ground, stay disciplined, rotate properly, and not get burned possession after possession, that alone would be enough to justify giving him consistent minutes in the rotation. He doesn't need to be elite, he just needs to avoid being a liability. That's the real challenge moving forward. He has to prove to the coaching staff that he can survive when the offense isn't going his way. The NBA is full of scorers, but the ones who stick are the ones who contribute in other areas when the shot isn't falling. Knecht has yet to show that consistently. Too many times last year, if his jumper wasn't dropping, he became invisible. He didn't rebound aggressively, he didn't make winning hustle plays, and he wasn't helping set the tone defensively. That's what separates someone who just has talent from someone who builds a long career. Still, he will get his opportunities, especially in the regular season. This Lakers team knows it will need to rest players like Austin Reeves or stagger rotations, and those nights open the door for Knecht to step in. The question is, can he take advantage? If he gets spot starts or extended minutes and catches fire offensively, he can give the Lakers a real boost. He has the ability to swing a game when he's in rhythm, but the concern is whether he can deliver consistently or whether he'll continue to run hot and cold. And consistency really is the key here. Last season, he was about as streaky as it gets. There were stretches where he looked like one of the best scorers on the floor, hitting everything in sight and forcing defenses to completely adjust. Then, just as quickly, he would slide into cold spells where he couldn't buy a bucket, no matter how good the looks were. That type of volatility is tough for a coaching staff to rely on because you don't know which version of Knecht you're getting from one night to the next. Now, streakiness isn't unique to him. Every shooter in the league goes through slumps. Even the greatest shooters in history, like Steph Curry, have had off nights where nothing would fall. But the difference is that elite players still find ways to make an impact when the shot isn't dropping. They rebound, they defend, they move the ball, they create gravity that opens up space for others. Knecht hasn't reached that level yet. Too often, his off nights meant he wasn't contributing in any other meaningful way. That's the part of his game that must evolve if he wants to be trusted with regular minutes. If he can channel his athleticism into better defense, crash the boards more aggressively, and show more commitment to the hustle plays, then his role becomes much easier to define. Instead of being seen as a shooter who's hot or cold, he transforms into a reliable two-way contributor who earns his spot on the floor regardless of his shooting line that night. That's the kind of player the Lakers need him to become, and it's entirely within his control. That's where development becomes critical. His finishing around the rim needs work. He has to improve attacking closeouts and creating plays when defenders chase him off the three-point line. If he adds those dimensions, he becomes much harder to game plan against. And despite his struggles, one thing stands out. Defenses still respected him. Even when he was ice cold, opponents stuck close, unwilling to give him open looks. They knew that all it takes is one make for him to heat up and completely change the rhythm of a game. That gravity alone has value, especially for a team with Luka Doncic, who collapses defenses better than anyone in the league. Imagine a fully developed Knecht playing alongside Luka. Luka draws two defenders, finds Knecht on the wing, and suddenly the floor is spaced in a way that makes the Lakers nearly impossible to guard. That's why shooters with movement like Klay Thompson are so valuable. Dallas made that move with Klay for the exact reason the Lakers might want to nurture Knecht's growth. Having a consistent off-ball shooter who forces defenses to stay honest. For Knecht, this season is about proving he can adapt. He needs to show he's more than just a streaky shooter and that he can survive on the defensive end. If he can do that, he'll carve out a role. If not, he risks being buried at the bottom of the rotation, especially as the Lakers continue to add depth. At best, he could grow into a reliable weapon next to Luka Doncic, spacing the floor and hitting timely shots. At worst, he becomes an occasional spark plug, a player you throw in to see if he can catch fire. The potential is there. It's all about consistency, discipline, and commitment to the other side of the ball.